name, save for the king.
The game is yours to play now.
The light provides.
This is Eventide Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Eventide Radio. This is a fan-made Destiny podcast where we have roundtable discussions about a variety of different topics concerning the popular video game franchise. At its core, this show is about having in-depth discussions about the game from a variety of different perspectives. I'm your host, Scotty, and with me are my co-hosts, Rob and Mapador, and today we have an incredibly exciting episode on the agenda. With us today is the extremely talented vocalist behind the Destiny soundtracks, the wonderful Laura Intravia. Laura is a composer, a vocalist, and instrumentalist, and she is internationally renowned for her multifaceted musical career in opera, concert music, and of course, video game and film soundtracks, such as Destiny, both Destiny 1 and 2, for that matter. So, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. We could not be more excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. No, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Dude, we are thrilled to have you on. I mean, we are all starstruck because we listen to your soundtracks constantly. I mean, at least I think I speak for everybody, but I personally do. So this is super exciting.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled to have you on. So before we get started, before we get into all this cool Destiny stuff, because you've worked on so many cool tracks, and we'll talk about that, like The Awoken and Remembrance and all these super iconic tracks from the franchise. But give us a glimpse into who you are as a person. Just give us a quick overview. You don't even have to talk about Destiny if you don't want to. Who are you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I am a musician. That's the easiest way I can describe my career. I like to wear a lot of different hats, so I do a lot of different things. I used to tour with a concert called Video Games Live for almost a decade. That was my first exposure to the industry. I was performing as a flutist, and then ended up expanding my role to being a vocalist and an arranger and orchestrator and so on. So I've done a lot of recording for mostly video game soundtracks, but I've done a little film and TV as well. Other games that I've worked on that I would be known for is I sang for the Mortal Kombat 11, the expansion, and then I have I feel weird mentioning this because I recorded something for Mortal Kombat 1, which is the one that just came out, but it's not actually in the game because there's a lot of dialogue happening at the moment that track happens, and like the voice was too distracting. So I'm on the album version. But like,
oh, nice.
If you look for me in the game, you won't find it. So I feel weird mentioning it, but I really like how it turned out. Let's see. I also have done a lot of arranging and orchestration for various projects. I've worked a lot with the Orchestre de Jeux Vidéo, which is a wind ensemble in Montreal who performs all video game music. I've worked on a couple of small indie games as a composer. I did a lot of writing on this game that I'm sure nobody has heard of called Archangel House of the Seven Stars. It was a passion project by the developer, and it's all very interesting, like kind of Christian mythology infused storytelling, like a point and click narratives type thing, and got to do a lot of a composition and vocal work on that. And yeah, I also have a day job as a church musician, so I do a lot of performing in various churches around where I live as an organist and vocalist and choir director and stuff like that. And I also teach in a couple private schools. I have a couple students there, and yeah, I love doing a little bit of everything.
Wow. Awesome. Wow. I would say triple threat, but more than triple threat. That's like,
oh, thank you.
Wow, many hats. That's super impressive. That's awesome. And then quick follow-up question. Do you teach music, I assume? Is that your... Oh,
yes. Yeah, I have a couple voice and flute students, but recently I was assisting at a school with their musical theater production, which is, if you've ever worked in teenage theater, you're kind of a catch-all for everything. So I was like a vocal coach, and I was playing piano during the show and stuff like that. So it's a good time. I like doing a mix of how am I trying to say this? Like performance-oriented things and also like educational things. I find it really rewarding to work with students when I can. I don't always have a lot of time for it. Like I could never take like a full-time or even a part-time teaching position somewhere, but like being a sort of like, pinch hitter to go in and like coach a couple of kids is really a lot of fun. And it's, they get excited when they hear that I work on video game music and stuff. So it gets them jazzed up for the lesson. So it's a really good time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, teaching is so rewarding. That's really cool. So how'd you fall into this line of work in the first place?
Oh gosh, so I when I was in college, I was going there for composition and voice performance. And I wasn't really playing a whole lot of flute at that point. I just didn't really have time, and I kind of thought that part of my life was over. Like when I was in middle school, high school, flute was like my life. Like that was the thing I
Mhm.
wanted to do. I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to singing. I didn't start like taking lessons seriously until I was in like my senior year of high school. And so, anyway, during the summers when I was in college, me and my friends would go to Otakon in Baltimore, and just I'd never gone to like anime conventions before, so we're doing the whole thing where we're dressing up in costumes and stuff. And I they have this talent show that we went to, and I saw a bunch of people perform on musical instruments, and like it was really like cute watching them, but you could kind of tell that these were like amateur performers and they couldn't really do a lot of spectacular stuff. And I was thinking like, oh man, I want to do something really flashy. I bet no one's ever heard something like that before. Like, I know I can play something very virtuosic, and that might be like a cool surprise. So the next
Mm.
couple of years I would apply for the talent show to perform in costume, and I was dressed up as Link, and I was doing
Oh.
a various flute arrangements. Yeah. And then my final year that I went, I did like a full like skit. It's on YouTube still. It's recorded on a potato that my friends like snuck into the hall and hid inside a jacket because you weren't allowed to film anything. So like it was truly a team effort. And
Truly.
it was I'll send you guys the link. It's cute. Like the quality is so bad on the video recorder that we were using, but like it was like on actual tape or something.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it was old, but it was like a flute battle between myself dressed as Link and Navi, and I had pre-recorded Navi's parts on like a piccolo, so it was a whole thing, and it had a really good response. Like everybody loved the skit, and it got posted on YouTube, and this is like 2008, so it went viral by
Wow.
like 2008 standards. It's like,
Wow.
Wow.
it's not like it doesn't even have 1 million views on it or anything like that, but it was making the rounds on various blogs and stuff like
Totally.
that. And it made its way around the internet to the showrunners of Video Games Live, and they reached out to me at the end of my that all went down during the summer before my senior year. And when I was graduating, I got the email from the VGL folks asking me if I wanted to perform the skit with them sometime, and I ended up making that connection and performed at a show in San Diego, like that was running concurrently with Comic-Con, and it was a big hit, and they ended up inviting me onto the concert tour more often. So I did that for like close to 9 years. And while I was on the tour, I was constantly meeting composers that were there as special guests, right? Like if we'd go to a certain city and like, for example, Mike Salvatori lived there, then he's going to come out to the show and
Got it.
sign autographs at the meet and greet table. And I met a lot of people that way, like Gerard Marino, who was the original composer of the first three Gods of Wars.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Trying to think of other folks. Mike and Marty O'Donnell were certainly a frequent special guests. Tom Salta, who's done a lot of work for the Halo series. Various people would come out to the shows, and it was several years after I had started performing with VGL that Mike just reached out to me out of nowhere. Like I don't know when the last time I had like spoken to him was, because it wasn't like we were like good friends. Like we were just friendly when we would bump into each other at these concerts and so on. But he said, I have an idea for something that you could record on for Destiny. We want to feature you on a bunch of tracks. And I was just like, talk about something falling into my lap. I didn't even consider that this would be a thing. And he was like, do you have a home studio? And I was like, yeah. And I bought all the things. And I had like a basic microphone and stuff, but like I got all the acoustic foam. I got a proper, sound interface. I was like, basically overnight constructed all of the things that I needed to like properly do this. I'd only like recorded casually for fan projects,
Mhm.
at least mostly up until that point. But yeah, I that was for Destiny. Oh God, House of Wolves, was that one of the expansions? It
Yes.
was the
Yeah.
one
Yes.
right before the Taken King, and yeah, that was the first time I worked with them, and they gave me, I think it was a total of 3 tracks, and then the rest is history. I ended up connecting with a lot of other video game composers over the years and started expanding like my little network of contacts and stuff. And now I have a good like cadre of people that we work well together, and they know like how my voice operates. So if they have a cue that's a good fit for me, they'll reach out and ask me to record. And I go to a lot of conventions to meet new composers and find people that I would enjoy working with, and and vice versa, obviously. And that's how I got started in the whole industry. It was a bunch of really lucky breaks.
So
That's a cool
it's
story.
amazing that like getting that interaction and getting that connection.
It was lucky. They say at least I'm sure they say this in a lot of different careers, but in music school they were always like, luck is preparation meets opportunity. So I I wasn't always completely prepared. I had to buy a lot of acoustic foam overnight. but like being able to having a fair idea of like how to work with composers, and I learned a lot from that first expansion working with them, how to be the most helpful collaborator and like what the composers need and stuff. It was a really good learning experience for me. And Mike is so nice. Like he's just the friendliest. He loves being a grandpa. Like he's just the nicest man I think I've ever met. And he was so sweet and understanding when I had questions and stuff. So yeah, I love that man.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've worked with him for how long now? How many years was that?
Let's see. So I didn't always work directly with him on projects, but yeah, that would have been 2015, and the last time I worked with him was Lightfall, and that was last year actually. So yeah, we're coming up on 10 years. Woo!
Wow. Nice. Whole decade with Destiny.
Oh gosh.
So was that kind of your like first, like you said you'd kind of did some fan stuff before, but was that kind of your first like formal gig like in the music industry?
It wasn't. I actually had a couple of little gigs before that, so I should send you the track so you can consider playing it during like a break on this podcast or something. I'll send it to you. It's one of the funniest things I've ever had to do. So actually one of the first composers I ever met was Norihiko Hibino, who was the composer of Metal Gear Solid 3 and also worked on Bayonetta and so on. Like he's the guy that wrote Snake Eater, of course. And,
no way.
Oh yeah. And he's also the nicest man in the world. And he was let's see, I was like 22 when I was on my first VGL tour. I'd never been outside the country before, and I was pretty nervous. Like I didn't really know everybody on the crew super well at that point, and it was a whole new world for me. And Norihiko, he'd been in the industry for a while. He was in like his late 30s at that point, and I mean we enjoyed hanging out with each other, but I think he also like kind of saw that I was not really knowing what to do next. So I think that's why he reached out to me about this. After the tour, maybe like a year later or maybe 2 years, he reached out saying, I have a flute track that I need to have recorded. Do you have a home studio? And like my answer was even more of a yes with quotations at that point, because like I really and truly had nothing. But like I'm not gonna say no.
Right.
Imagine if you were honest, like completely honest, and be like, no.
Yeah,
like,
sorry, I don't do that. Yeah, no, absolutely not. So I said, yeah.
Of course I do.
Let me go find some microphones. So it was this really short, I don't want to say it was short, but it was just one track for this game called Automedius Excellent, which is like literally translates as Japanese, from Japanese as a Gradius for girls. A female themed Gradius game. Like I don't even know how to describe it. You'd know what I mean if you saw it. So anyway, it was like this jazz flute track, and I also don't play jazz, so that also factors into this story. So I found a microphone in my dad's office that I think I must have used for the flute link sketch that I mentioned earlier, and it's like a computer mic from 2003. It's not a recording microphone at all, but that is what I used, and I just listened to the track and listened to a bunch of jazz flute tracks to get ideas for like what it should sound like, and I just flailed. And like I listening back to it, it's not the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Boy howdy would I do some things differently, but I sent it in and I'm crossing my fingers like, oh my god, please don't let me screw this up. And Norihiko, again, nicest man in the world, he writes back, sounds very good, recording quality is fairly good. Cool. That sounds like a solid C+.
Yeah.
When I finally heard it in the game, they had drenched it with reverb, and like it honestly, it really doesn't sound that bad, but like I can hear some things in my performance that I would have changed. Like I'm slightly behind the beat and stuff like that. I actually really like sharing it because it's an example of like, some things you learn as you go, and it's okay that this is enshrined forever in this video game because like first of all, like nobody cares that much about like my little tiny recording errors, and second of all, like it worked for what the game needed. You don't always have to give like some perfect brilliant performance. Like if it works for what the Gradius for Girls required then you're in the clear. So anyway, that was actually my very first video game recording gig, and that was in 2011.
It's incredible. That's so fun to look back on like your old work and just juxtapose it with like what you've been doing now and just see wow, look how far I've come,
Honestly, yeah, I do that a lot with I had to give a couple of presentations this year about my career actually, so it was really timely that you guys reached out. And I was putting together some like listening examples as part of my my PowerPoint presentation, and I had like the Awoken from Destiny, House of Wolves, excuse me, the Taken King, whichever. And I had it put next to something from the Witch Queen. And when I listened to them back to back, I was like, wow, I really sound a lot different. Like I learned a lot along the way, that has really helped me as a performer. And it was just kind of neat to reflect on that. Like I hadn't put back to back recordings of myself, 8 years apart before.
Right.
And it was really interesting to be like, I've come a long way. I don't know if I'm at the end yet, but
yeah, no,
I don't
absolutely.
know if I'm the best, but it's really I feel like I've improved a lot, and that makes me happy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of awesome that like you say like, oh wow, I've improved so much since The Awoken, and like The Awoken is one of like my favorite tracks in the entire Destiny soundtrack library. So
I
that's
get that
pretty
a lot.
impressive.
Like a lot of usually, honestly, when people ask me what's my favorite track I've ever sung on, for a long time, it was just like, oh, The Awoken, like hands down. And now I'm like, oh, I love that. I love Lucent World from Witch Queen. Like that was also really like a jam. But like The Awoken has a really special place in my heart. So that's also one of my faves.
Have you got like a favorite out of all the video game music that you've done?
Ooh, that's a good question. Out of all the video game music I've ever performed, that's a good question. I always think of Destiny first because it's not that I'm afforded like a ton of creative control on it, but I have some. So the first time they gave me tracks, like for The Awoken, for example, I don't think they gave me any specifications as to vowel sounds. Like there's no lyrics, right? It's just this melody that kind of flows. So not really knowing what they wanted, and maybe they also weren't positive what they wanted, that was the first time I had the idea of like, well, what if I just did like a bunch of different options and they could like mix and match. So I did one take that was like essentially humming with my mouth slightly open, and that's how the track starts, with that I don't know if that came through on Discord because of the noise cancellation.
It came in and out, which is I wish I could.
Yeah.
We're all like, it just came through. I wish it just came through.
We're all begging for a live performance right now.
Yeah.
But halfway through it switches to like an ah vowel, and like those were just I could be wrong about this, but I believe I recorded those separately and they kind of spliced in what they wanted for each section. So it was neat. Like I kind of get to figure out, what kind of vowel are they looking for here. But also I think the reason why I think Destiny might be my favorite is that a lot of times they're asking me to record with no vibrato at all because they want to meld my voice with like another synth instrument, and that's sort of this iconic sound that's become a part of the Destiny sonic world. And like part of me is like, ugh, I hate having to not vibrate because that's what my voice like wants to do. Like I am an opera singer. Like that's what I trained to do. But the result from like keeping it perfectly straight is just so cool when you hear the synth like melding with what the voice is doing. It's really, really neat to hear. So I always love the way my voice sounds in the Destiny stuff. So I think that's probably at least towards the top of the list, if not like my absolute favorite stuff I've ever worked on.
Oh, cool. So what's quite interesting you said about doing different versions of The Awoken the vocals in that. When I would listen to it, I thought it was multiple people because of the fact that there are different parts to it in you know.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's so interesting.
Different tones and yeah. So I thought it was multiple people.
That is funny. Yeah, it's just me.
Yeah, no.
What a cool effect, though. Like that, I really am interested to know that.
I thought it was about 3, maybe 4 people because of it. It, as you say, it changes, and I always thought it was a group and not just one. Wow.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that is really interesting to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive that you can do that with your voice. Like so many different things. I mean, as someone who doesn't sing at all of this is just incredible to me. So
you should try, Scotty.
No,
I bet there's a voice inside you.
I don't think so.
So when you're doing like home studio recording, are you, I guess, like, how do I phrase this? What level of maturity of the music are you given? Like, are you sometimes given like MIDI files and it's like, yeah, just kind of figure out and improvise, or are you given like relatively complete tracks where it's like all that's missing is your vocal part, or is it sometimes a hybrid of all of those things and you have to kind of interpret as you go?
Yeah. Usually I'm getting like a mostly finished track. It might not be the final recorded orchestra, but it's like a pretty accurate mock-up. Like they never give me like, general MIDI, figure it out type stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Thankfully. Yeah, they usually have like a mock-up voice that's sort of the vibe they're looking for, like, one of those sound libraries of just like, female ooh or whatever. And usually the tracks like have all the percussion and so on in the background. And yeah, like honestly, sometimes it throws me because like I can't picture sometimes how my voice is going to fit into it. Like for Lucent World, when I got that and I heard like that really rumbly bass line and when the drums and the strings start hitting really hard, I was like, am I really supposed to keep singing softly? I just felt like it was supposed to go a lot harder, but I was like, all right, this is what they asked for. This is what I'm going to do. And like they did like this really cool delay effect on the voice that like filled it out so much. And it's like I don't know what they're going to do in terms of the processing. So I usually just have to like trust like this is going to work in the end. They're going to do a lot of cool stuff, even if it feels like maybe a little wimpy to sing it super softly here. They're going to process it and add some effects that really fill it out.
Out of curiosity, do you play Destiny? And if you do or ever have, like what kind of experience is that like hearing your own voice in the game? So
I do not play because I am absolutely horrendous at these types of games and like first person shooters. Like it's like I grew up with my older brother like playing, GoldenEye, and we would just my brother was not like he's a teenage boy and me and my sister we're in like middle school or whatever, so we couldn't keep up with him like regardless, but he was also just a mercilessly good player. Like I can't describe how ridiculous my brother is. Like, so like as extension it's like, well, this game is bad because I'm bad at it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I never super got into first person shooters. Besides like Perfect Dark was another favorite that we would play, and GoldenEye. But I have tuned into live streams on Twitch just as like whenever the expansion comes out, because I just want to see like what the worlds look like and everything, like where the music appears, and looking up like the first one of like I keep going back to the Witch Queen because I just really loved how all the music in that turned out. Like when they first end up in the Lucent world. Just like the arrival point and hearing my voice like at that moment, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I was watching a lot of streams for Nightfall because people were commenting on some part of the battle sequence where like the voice comes in and it's really powerful, and like it's not in the soundtrack for some reason. So I had to.
I was about to ask.
I was going to say
that was this burns me. This burns.
This is like Mav's favorite subject ever.
It's I love leitmotif in music, and they use it a lot in Destiny. That's one of the reasons I really like it. Mm-hmm. And there's a leitmotif through Lightfall, which is, I'm guessing, the motif for Neomuna, and it's either your voice you humming it, or I don't know the correct terms. And it's used in the Root of Nightmares, the final boss in that Nezarec. when you do damage to him in his boss fight, that motif plays, and it's this really amped up version of it, and it's really empowering, and it's really good. It's not in the official release.
Oh, that's such a bummer, because like I looked up a stream finally because somebody tagged me in a tweet and was like, yo, Laura's voice on the whatever spot, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that is, but I'll try to go find it. And I looked up their stream, and I listened to it for a while, and there was a point where they all went, oh, what the voice is doing, and like I don't know the game and the lore like super duper well, so I was like, oh, that must be a really important moment, and like it does sound really cool, and people were commenting that it's not in the soundtrack, and I'm just like mystified. Like, I wonder how that slipped through the cracks, but maybe they thought it just didn't work when they were trying to put all the pieces together. Like that,
Right.
that unfortunately I have no input on.
No,
but yeah, it's a shame that it didn't make it in, because a lot of people really enjoyed it.
luckily we have people on YouTube who sit
Who,
there
like,
and record
redo
it from
it.
the game. Yeah, and they rip it from the game and they post it. So luckily we have that, so we can still.
Oh, perfect! Please link
can
me that,
still
because I
hear
would
it.
love to.
Yeah,
love to, like,
I'll get it
put
for
it in my
you
next
now.
reel.
Yeah,
but
totally.
it that really burns me. That I understand why they do it, because TV shows do a similar thing where they don't include the whole, say, track, and they take parts out and they don't include them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have always wondered why. And I
Mhm.
think in Destiny's case, a lot of the time it's for the music plays when something happens in the game,
Mhm.
because a lot of the music's quite interactive
Right.
with what's going on. And a lot of the time, the music that's missed out on the soundtrack is the interactive part, that
Mhm.
something happens and it changes it. And that's typically what, unfortunately, gets missed.
I see. Yeah, like actually that reminds me. Another interesting thing about the way I get the tracks for Destiny is if there's like dynamic changes that are supposed to occur based on, like, whether you're fighting enemies, how many enemies you're fighting, and so on.
Right.
Like, they don't just remix my same voice. Like, I will receive like an 18 to 20 minute long track with all of the different variations of the
Whoa.
theme
Wow.
and record it every single time.
Wow.
Yeah, so like the Lucent World track was something like 13 minutes long, and it included so sometimes they'll remix my voice into another track, but for the most part, for like these long, like, sort of environmental areas that are supposed to change dynamically depending on what's going on, like, that's all individual recordings of the different sections, which
Wow.
it's very
wow.
taxing, but it's cool, because it doesn't get old, and you can, I can make a little bit of a change when it gets heavier, like maybe the voice gets a little bit more forward and stuff. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's really fun to get to do that.
Okay, yeah. That was kind of like my follow-up question when you brought that up. Like,
Mhm.
do you think is that process where you get these like long dynamic pieces, is that like repetitive to you, or is that like cool that you get to play with it?
It can be, but like one of the other things that's helpful for me to remember, if there's a later section that I'm like, oh man, I just feel like I did it better in the last one. It's like, well, if they agree, then they'll splice in that part of the voice. You know what I mean? Like they've
Sure.
got lots of takes that they can work with, and I always try to provide like 3 or 4 options of each line so that they can mix and match like whatever feels best. And if for some reason, like, in section 4 of this dynamic track, they're like, man, it would just, we liked version 1 the best, and they could just plug that in there, and it just makes the track better. But yeah, it is a lot of work. Like, it can be vocally taxing, especially this type of singing is very like straight and pure, which is harder to do for me than if I was just like singing an opera aria, because it requires so much control and
Mhm.
intonation, and like, the the timbre that they're looking for. It's very tricky, and I usually have to practice for a bit to make sure that it's not like I can let me rephrase. I could just walk in and do it off the top of my head, but it's going to sound way better if I put time into like figuring out, okay, how does the voice operate in these different sections? Like, what different sounds can I even pull off for this? Okay, now that I figured that out, which sound do I think they want the most? And that part of it is very creatively rewarding. It's just physically taxing to
Sure.
have to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I totally get that. So do you think, in your opinion, pretend that hopefully, let's say your employers and Mike aren't listening, do you find opera singing or this sort of like really controlled process more, I guess, artistically rewarding or fun, I guess, for lack of a better word?
That's a really good question. It's rewarding in different ways. Like, opera singing, like that challenges me on a different sort of technical level, and it's live performance, which is like requiring a different set of skill. Like, and when I say live, I mean like I'm performing a character in front of people, and that is very rewarding. And it's why I enjoyed performing with video games live and so on, because I can, emote the way I would if this was a standalone, what's what I'm looking for, like cantata or opera or something like that. Like, what would the video game look like if it was just an orchestral piece? And, it's really fun to get to interpret that like live in front of an audience. So yeah, like working with characters and stuff like that, and learning, like I'm a contemporary opera singer, so I do a lot of new music stuff, and it's usually like wickedly hard counting and harmonies and so on. And like I really love that stuff. Like, I'm a huge nerd for hard material. But for video games, like I get to sing in a lot of different styles. Like, opera singing is the one style. Like, it has to sound a certain way, and that is what is acceptable. Like, when I'm doing video game soundtracks, it's often like way more creatively interesting in some ways. Like, I get to sing softly into a microphone that is way different than having to do opera, and it's really fun to get to use my voice in different ways. Like, I actually recently performed in a video game concert at GDC in San Francisco, and I was singing on a couple different pieces, and they were all wildly different. Like, one was the God of War solo, which is just straight up opera. After that, it was Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is like, old school, like Renaissance style vocals. And it's really fun to get to do different styles, or like even pop singing or jazz singing and stuff like that for video games. Like, that's something that would essentially never come up in the opera world, except in like very rare scenarios. So yeah, they're both interesting in different ways. I enjoy the technical process of opera singing, but I also really enjoy the creative challenges of like learning different styles for the games.
Yeah, totally. I totally get that.
How long typically would it be for you to do, to work on these bits of music? Like, say, you don't have to say anything, but say they contact you about Final Shape and they go, right, we need you to do this, a load of music. Typically, how long would that end up being?
That's a good question. So usually they'll reach out to me like anywhere from like, I don't know, a week to a month in advance to be like, hey, we want to record a bunch of stuff. Are you available? And what's your availability like? And then I will tell them. It's like, if it's over the summer and it's like, this week I will be away for a wedding. Do you need it before that or after that? And then they'll tell me before, and then I will scramble, But usually when I get the tracks, I'll spend, it depends on how much music there is, but I'll spend like at least a couple of days just recording all of that material. Like, the first day I get the material, I'll probably just practice it and create my templates for recording and so on. And then the next day I'll dive in, and I do have to, like, the reason it takes longer is that, like, the more you sing, the more your voice can get fatigued and it starts sounding a little bit less polished. So you got to bake in little breaks here and there, and, drink water, sit down and eat something.
Right.
And if they're asking me to sing something that's like particularly low, like, I have a very high voice, so I can sing high all day long. Like, my voice likes to do that. But if I'm singing a lot of low sustained stuff, then I have to take breaks, because this is very technical, but as I get fatigued and my neck muscles start tensing up a little bit, okay, so let me explain some vocals real quick. So if you want to sing lower notes, your voice box, the larynx has to relax. And when you're singing higher, ideally it doesn't like tense up or anything, but you don't need to access as much of the lower part of your chords. So if everything starts tensing up, right, if you're getting tired after a really long day, I can't access those low notes anymore, because like all the muscles around my neck are just too tight, and the larynx can't like relax enough for me to access the low end. And that's just like the nature of the human body, right? Like, ideally I would sing perfectly all the time and this wouldn't be an issue. But as we get tired, other muscles start compensating for what should be happening. And also, like, the chords, you can't go all day with the voice, or the chords can get bruised too. So that's all to say that, like, you have to be careful when you're recording vocals to not overdo it and then blow out your voice. Then you have to wait a day for, like, essentially for like the swelling to go down.
Right.
Because it's not like you're in pain, but you ever have like post-nasal drip and your voice is just kind of crackly and not feeling super great. It kind of is like that, where it's like, all right, I just have to wait this out and drink a bunch of water. So you got to be careful with that. Otherwise, like if you don't take breaks during the session, then you might have to take a much longer break that could, impede the whole creative process. If like, oops, I sang too hard and now my voice is broken, I gotta wait a couple days.
So being a perfectionist workaholic isn't good for that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to be kind to yourself. Let me put it that way.
Have you ever had like a track that or something that you've had to do that you just couldn't crack straight away, and it was like a really tough process?
Yes, there was it didn't really make it into the game in its final form, but in the I don't know if it was House of Wolves or Taken King, but there was a piece called the Death Singer's Dirge, and it accompanied this like banshee attack type thing. And so Sky Lewin had written this piece, and like they gave me the heads up. Mike was like, "This is really hard." I just want to let you know. And it was purely atonal music. It had like 4 different voice parts, and like there were no harmonies. It was just this nightmare land. And like that was the point, right, of the track. It's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
But they ended up only using like 30 seconds of it, at least on the soundtrack. I don't know if it, was longer in the game. I kind of think it wasn't, but the track was like closer to, I think like 3 or 4 minutes long or something like that. And it was so hard. Like it was just, I didn't know how to tune. Like there was no backing track except for like the MIDI voices, and again it's all atonal, and so like it was just really hard to sing in tune with the various voices because the harmonies were missing, and that kind of like gently influences the tuning a little bit of how the voice is going to work. So I would do a full take and then listen back to it and be like, oh god, this note is like just consistently out of tune. I gotta stop and practice that. It took me like a full 10 hours, I think, to record this thing. I actually have like I found it and exported it recently. It's like I exported for myself so I could just hear what all the voices sounded like together. So it's like very sloppy. It hasn't been edited. Like there's mistakes here and there with the cutoffs, but like the harmonies are just so wild. It took me several days to get through all of the material. That was a lot.
That's incredible. I know exactly what song you're talking about too.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how difficult that was.
Is it was it Taken King or House of Wolves with where you go to the get Crota's essence? Is that the one, Scotty?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I thought you were asking me, and I was like, "Oh,
that's Death Singer's Dirge in Taken King.
Yeah,
that's so funny. That one's iconic.
Yeah, I'll send you I'll send you the crummy like demo version that I have with my voice.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to hear that.
You can hear all the really wild stuff that didn't make it into the final cut.
I'm not loving to that.
So how did Death Singer's Dirge get on the soundtrack? But like Nezarek didn't make it on the soundtrack.
The part that people like. Yeah.
No, I mean I understand why it doesn't. Like from just I understand at a surface level why it doesn't. It's just frustrating that. Obviously we know that you don't have control over that at all.
No, I get that.
It is unfortunate.
It's wild. Yeah, I wonder if I don't know if they make concessions for time. If I don't know if like they're like, oh, we've got like a little bit too much music. We got to make little cuts here and there. Maybe they just weren't happy with how it turned out. It is quite possible that they listened to it and they were like, oh, you know what? We don't really care for like how this. Let's just do the first 30 seconds,
right?
And or it might have been too distracting. Like you'll hear like there's a lot of really gnarly harmony stuff that like might have just gotten lost or like was conflicting with the sound design in some weird way. It's like it's hard to say, but there's like all sorts of things that like in our little creative bubble as like composers, it's like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever written, and it's like actually it's not gonna work at all for the following reasons.
Right.
At the end, could we do a listen along to the 2 versions?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to. I'm actually trying to look up the clip right now. I think I put it in my
That's awesome.
That would be so much fun.
So you kind of mentioned that whole like kind of hearing your own stuff, and do you ever enlist a friend or your roommate or something to kind of listen to something you've been working on for like immediate feedback to see like, no, that doesn't work, or like like, or you just kind of like by yourself and it's something you take on alone?
Yeah, it's got to be by myself because usually I've signed an NDA or
Oh,
something.
yeah,
like
okay,
that,
yep,
so, yeah.
yep. I thought about that. It's like, but if you don't have any context for what's being listened to, but yeah, that still makes sense.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But honestly, like I if I needed feedback, like I would want to just ask the composer anyway, because yeah. So if I was ever unsure about something, I would just email them and say like, hey, I've got a couple of like demos here. Just let me know like which one of these is like what you were looking for. But at this point for Destiny, it's like since we've done so many of these, I kind of know like what sound they want. So it's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a lot smoother.
That makes sense. Well, and I guess that was going to be kind of a follow-up question is, what does that like feedback loop look like then if you are kind of unclear about something, and how quickly that turnaround is of, this is kind of what we were thinking of too, and then just keep going with that direction, or actually we were thinking more like this, but that makes sense. So
yeah, and usually it's like like at that point, like when I'm recording, like they're waiting for those tracks from me. So if I have a question, like I'll email them measure 33. Like I can kind of do it one of two ways. Do you have a preference? And they'll be like, oh, definitely this one. And I'll be like, cool. And that saves everybody time.
If you are maybe like, do you also sometimes get like concept art or context for like what it is you're recording, if like to see if that might help drive inspiration? Like are you given context for some of the tracks that you're recording, or is it just kind of like here's the music and go with it?
For Destiny, it's basically like here's the music. They might tell me like this is accompanying like this, yeah, I don't know if they've ever told me specifics of like what something. I feel like for the Awoken, they told me like this is going to be like a sort of ambient track. Like they might give me like generic terms like that, but I think actually the composers have probably also signed NDAs and they can't give me a ton of info. But on other projects, when I worked on a game called Honor of Kings and another game called Arc Knights, usually for those they'll give me a picture of the character that this is accompanying, and like a list of like descriptions of that character and what the song should be about. Especially if I'm writing lyrics, I would absolutely need to have all of that information.
Sure.
But yeah, for Destiny, it's usually just go.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
So do you do all of this from like remotely?
I do, yeah. It's very rare that I have to go into the studio anymore, but I just have like a very simple home recording setup. I've got a special microphone. I've got baffling around to absorb the sound and use a sound interface. I record everything in Reaper. Basically, I only usually go into recording studios if they need to like also record a video to go along with it, because that's very like in vogue right now to do behind the scenes footage.
Right.
Which like Destiny has never asked me to do. But I know I was like, I remember watching a special on the Nightfall like music. There was like a YouTube video that they did about the recording of the soundtrack and stuff. And they showed the orchestra and like Mike Salvatori like in the studio, and I was like, oh man, I wish I recorded something for this, but at least I don't think they ever have, but I could be misremembering. But yeah, everything is basically in the home studio. It's a lot more cost effective for everybody, and I don't have to worry about trying to schedule a time, and it's easier for everyone.
I said when lockdown happened, you were set straight
away.
Oh
yeah. The video game industry was like way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
We were having to convert to work from home. Yeah, absolutely.
That's impressive. That's cool. Do you like that flexibility?
I do. I also like it. There's pros and cons of each. Like it's nice to be able to control when I want to record, but there's also like, if you live with another person, you have to ask them, can I record?
Totally.
And like, that usually the answer is like, of course, but you got to juggle like those timelines a little bit, right? But I do like the flexibility, but I also vastly prefer having a recording engineer being the one to hit record and play and stuff like that. Like it helps me stay more in the zone, and like I don't have to worry about like adjusting levels and everything in the middle. Like I can just focus on the performance. So the ideal would be like they hire an engineer to come to my house and press record and play for me. But yeah, they both have pros and cons, but like I think overall the benefits of recording remotely are far greater than the complications of going into a studio and so on.
Sure, totally. So how often do you get to go into the studio? Is it like once in a blue moon kind of thing?
Yeah. Basically at this point, maybe 1 or 2 times a year. And it's usually for like very small projects. For most of the big stuff I do, it's all remote recorded.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. I work remotely as well, and there are pros and cons. Like you said, like you have to tell like roommates to vacate the premises because you're
Yep.
like working on something or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I only also get to go into the office like once in a blue moon kind of thing, which is like good, but also you kind of miss that like connection with like the rest of your team.
Yeah.
But
For sure. Yeah. It is really nice getting to work with a group. Like it's more fun, frankly. Like
Yeah.
having more
Totally.
people around. Especially you get that like immediate feedback. Like it is nice to have the composer there to say like that was exactly what I wanted, or like can we do that again? It can be a little nerve-wracking like sending the stuff off and being like, is the next email gonna have notes, or did I
Yeah, right.
did I nail it, or am I gonna have to do this again?
Absolutely. Okay, so I need to bring this up because this is going to be a little off topic from Destiny, but I'm going through your incredible list of like your credits and everything, and I mean, there's just so much stuff here, and I'm so impressed. And then
Thank you.
I'm a huge Pokemon fan, and I'm seeing you worked with Braxton Burks on like those phenomenal orchestral albums that I listen to like on a daily basis. Okay, that's amazing. Like what?
Yeah, those were a while ago. It's like I think 2016 or so. That was a fun project to work on.
Wow, that's cool. So with all of this stuff, is this all remote as well? Like, do you just record all of these sorts of things just
Let's
from
see.
your home studio?
I just pulled up my my track list. Let me see what I didn't record in a home studio. So anything that's choral was definitely, well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes when I'm multi-tracking, that is I can't even say that. Okay, let me rephrase. Sometimes I record choral stuff in my own home, and like at that, whenever I'm doing multi-tracked choral stuff, they usually want you to triple track it. So there's 3 like Lauras on a part to fill out the sound a little bit more and
Okay.
sound properly like a choir. So sometimes we do that at home, but if it's like a proper like a chorus for a game, for example, Code Vein, was everybody calls it Anime Souls because that's literally what it is. It's like if FromSoft like made an anime game, and that was in a recording studio in Boston. So like there were like 20-30 singers there. We were all just blasting through all of these extremely epic choral music. Like I was exhausted by the end of that. Like we all did, like I was getting dizzy by the end of that session because it was just
Wow.
all like intensely like humongous. I'm trying to see what else is on here. Yeah, most of the other stuff though is remote recorded. I'm scrolling through to see if there's anything else that isn't, but yeah, all the Destiny stuff was remote, and King of Avalon was this like mobile game that I had to go into the studio to record the vocals and the video because they want like a behind the scenes video and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, scrolling through this, yeah, most of it was in my house.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Is there a certain like album or expansion that you had the most fun working on as like a collective piece? Like a unit as opposed to like other ones.
Let's see.
Because they all have their own unique identity, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm curious if there's one in particular that you're like, oh, this one was really cool, and they all the tracks I worked on like worked really well together or whatever.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. In terms of like a collective album, I think again, like Destiny is one of the games where I've done like more than one track on the game. Like a lot of these other ones, it's like sort of a special guest type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm trying to find an example. Like Mortal Kombat 11, I was like one of a few vocal soloists, and I accompanied like the monks, basically, like Kung Lao's folks. Like that was where my voice would appear in the game, and they had like a different singer for a different character and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. Like the Mortal Kombat 11 stuff, like really sounded great. Honestly, the game that I am really proud of how much I performed on is not out yet. And I can't say I can't say what it is, but it's a very big deal, and I am super excited. that one, I don't know if I've ever recorded more music for a video game than I did for this one, and it was.
When is the game's expected release?
Likely this summer, so it's right around the corner.
Okay.
So I'm looking at your website again, and I'm seeing a picture of what appears to be, if I'm not mistaken, is that Red Rocks that you're performing live at?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Wow, so you've been there.
Of course I've been there. Best concert venue ever.
Oh
How
yeah,
was
it was
that?
incredible. That was one of my favorite shows I've ever done in my life. It was like practically sold out. It was like a
Wow.
summer evening. The wind was blowing. Like it was like we did a bunch of arrangements that I've created for the show, and like I got to wear all these different like that particular dress, like the red dress, like the feeling of it billowing around in the wind felt extremely epic. And Colorado Symphony was performing there, like one of the best symphonies like in the country. That was a really special show.
Oh, that's awesome. So what was the show about? Like
That
what
was
the
Video Games Live, and that was in 2015.
Okay, cool. That is awesome.
Yeah,
I can only
that's
imagine how cool that was.
oh yeah, it was a blast. That's actually Austin Wintry on the podium behind me. He's conducting the Journey segment in this particular picture.
Oh,
At least the one on my
incredible.
front page. If that's
That's
the
so
one you're looking
cool. Journey as in like Destiny Journey?
for. Oh no, Journey like the video game.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about.
That's,
Yeah. So he was there as a special guest.
people love that game.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful music.
that game is wonderful. That's incredible. All right, Rob, I'm sorry. I feel like I've been hogging all the questions.
No, well, I mean, you've nailed everything and kind of asked the questions that I was curious about. Like, I'm just letting you cook. It's like the to be a fly on the wall. Like that's all it is. Like this has been just kind of a treat talking to you and kind of hearing just sort of this side of kind of the composition of music and kind of the involvement of individual people to kind of come together to help make this, right? Like I think when we think of like video game and movie music, you always just think of like this big orchestra in a room recording, but it's kind of cool to hear some of the gory details of individuals who get kind of selected to do certain tracks for things to kind of finish them off. So this is cool.
Oh yeah, I'm super glad to share. And like I made a point of mentioning before like that I have a day job as a liturgical musician, because like I don't think anybody just makes a living as a performer for video games. Like we're all supplementing various like it's all about like I think there's a lot of people out there that are like trying to quote unquote make it in video games. And like it's easy for me to say when I've worked on a lot of like high profile projects, like I'm not dodging that. I've been very lucky to make the contacts that I have and like perform with BGL and so on. But it also like it really just comes down to, is the project right for my voice? Like they're gonna call other people if they have a project where my voice is not the right fit. It's like Destiny is kind of an outlier where, I've become sort of like the iconic sound, I guess, so to speak. But like, there's a lot of other games where like I'll do a guest appearance on a track because they're looking for a classical soprano sound. That doesn't mean that I am the voice, of that game. And it is like, okay, if they like next year they put out a track with a different singer, it's like, it doesn't mean that I did a bad job or that they don't want to work with me anymore. It's just what the project calls for,
Right.
So if there are any like, would-be aspiring performers listening, it's like you have to find the people that or let me rephrase, the projects that your voice is a good fit for. That's the people that you want to connect with, instead of like thinking I need to be on every soundtrack ever. It's like, what does my voice do well? Let me connect with those people. And in the case of Destiny, it's like my voice sound works particularly well for what they want, so that's why they've kept calling me. But it's necessary to wear a lot of different hats as a musician. Like I could never just like survive on video game music alone. But I think wearing a lot of different hats also keeps you fresh when it comes to these recording projects, because I have become a versatile performer just from like exposing myself to different performance styles and stuff like that. So the more versatile you are, the more projects you can connect with and perform on. But yeah, it's all about like, is my voice right for this project? And sometimes like I've gotten contacts where they ask me if can you record this song, and they'll send it to me, and it's like, I don't know, like an EDM track, and like the reference voice doesn't sound a thing like mine, and I know I can't do it. Like there's only been like a handful of times that I've had to respond and say, you know what? I don't think I can do what you're looking for, but I can recommend people who can.
Yeah, so that was going to be my follow-up question is if you find something that doesn't work for you, but I'm sure you have a little kind of short list of people that you can are like reliable and good to work with and
Oh,
ultimately,
totally. Yeah. And in the case of like if I was ever sick, like really, really ill, and like I've recorded plenty of stuff while sick. Like the Mortal Kombat 1 track, like if you look it up, like just picture me in between every single take hacking up a lung.
Oh my gosh.
That's another nice thing about remotely recording. It's like I don't need to tell someone I have COVID. I can do it anyway.
Right.
Just suffer through it alone. And
yeah, exactly. But in the instance that like I don't know, if I had a project that was due like the next day and I was like violently ill or something, it's like I have a list of performers like in my head that I would be like, I can't deliver, call this person, she does what I do, and it's just trust that like you're doing the right thing. You don't want to give them a bad product, and you just helped out a friend. Like that, they're going to remember that. That's a good thing to do. Giving somebody else work if you can't pull it off. But yeah, most of the time when I have to turn something down, it's because like they clearly didn't like familiarize with what my voice does, and I have to. It's a little bit awkward to be like, yeah, this isn't really in my wheelhouse, but it. Let me just give you the names of people who can and save you that step.
Sure.
It feels good to be able to help somebody out that way.
Okay, so like another piece of advice you would give to the up and coming aspiring Lauras of the world is is to say like, don't take on every project per se, right?
Yeah, you never want to mislead someone. If somebody gives you a track and you listen to it and you're like, I'm not really experienced in jazz flute, for example, but I feel like I could learn to do this thing. Like I feel like that's within my abilities to do. Then that's a good example of like say yes, just to get your foot in the door, learn how to do it on the fly, and like just kickstart your career. This is going to be a great first credit. Like that, I support situations like that where it's like, okay, I don't have experience in this, but I think I can do it. If you listen to something and it's like, not only have I never done this before, but I don't think I could ever pull off this sound, you don't want to say yes just to get the gig, because you're going to hand them something that they didn't ask for. And you can always like hedge your bets a little bit and say like, listen, this isn't really in my wheelhouse. I can demo this for you, but I'm not sure it's what you're looking for. Then they'll appreciate your honesty, and like if you send them the demo and they're like, oh no, this is perfect, then cool. Like that's a happy outcome. But if they listen to it and they're like, yeah, that's not really what I'm going for. That's happened to me before when I've demoed stuff and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have to go with somebody else. It sucks, it never feels great in the moment, but you also don't want to put a bad result on a video game, right? Like you don't want to sound bad on something. And if that would be the result, that like you're trying to pull off a sound that your voice just doesn't do very well, that like it's not that you're a bad singer, it's just that your voice doesn't do that, and that's but people are going to hear that as like, wow, what a terrible performance. You know what I mean? Nobody wins in that scenario. So yeah, like you never want to say yes to the point of like misleading somebody that badly, so you got to be careful with that stuff. But I think most people, like I would hope, have a good understanding of what's within the realms of possibility, and what like again a lot of times it comes down to the reference track. If they send you something like, can you sound like this, and like usually the answer is like yes or no. It's usually pretty obvious.
Gotcha. That's interesting to know. Yeah, because I guess it is. I mean, when it comes to singing, again, this is coming from someone who knows nothing about singing, but I assume it's different than other things in the sense that like the human body physically cannot do everything, right? It's different than other jobs where it's like you just like make it work, but there's sometimes with different pieces it's like you physically cannot do that. You're just not like
exactly. Like I had to come to terms with this when like I was starting, like the showrunners of VGL were asking me to try singing the Snake Eater song, and I was trying to do it the way like the original singer did it, like and it just wasn't working for my voice. And I I cringe looking back on the first couple videos of it, because like I know what I was going for. Like I was trying to do what I heard other big belty singers doing, but like my voice just doesn't do that. Like I get taxed very easily doing physically taxed, I mean, like belting and stuff like that. Like my voice just I could never sing a whole concert belting the way like Amy Lee from Evanescence does. Like my voice isn't built for that. But if I'm strategic about it, then I can belt in certain ways that don't fatigue me as much. It's not going to sound exactly like the original singer of XYZ song or whatever, but it's going to sound good because it fits my voice, you know? And like, I always get comments like, this doesn't sound anything like Cynthia Harrell. And it's like, I know.
It's because I'm not Cynthia Harrell.
I'm not. I have no problem admitting that. So like it was funny. I only recently in the last few years performing with my band. We're like a funk fusion ensemble that does video game music, and that's been really integral to like developing my versatility as a performer. Like, and we're performing like funk stuff, and I realized like as we were doing more like, you know, pop oriented songs, and I was really struggling with like that performance type. I realized that my pop voice is very similar to my classical voice, and that like my voice likes to move. Like holding out a note powerfully for several seconds doesn't feel as good to me as doing like a really like flourishing run or something like that. Like singing a bunch of notes really, really fast is very easy for me and like feels good. And it's true for like pop stuff too. Like I have a flexible voice. It's not a powerhouse voice like, again, Amy Lee, like she's got like a powerhouse voice. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, okay. So I just have to sing this my way. It seems like really basic, but like it really took me a while to figure out like, oh, I'm just going to have to sing it like this. Like I can't do it the way this other singer did, but I can make it sound fun like in my own voice. And once I like developed the confidence to do that, I felt a lot better like tackling different performance types and stuff.
Right. Do you awesome. A sort of side thing, but do you have any like music that you like listening to, you know, from other video, you know, stuff that you haven't worked on from other video games, TV?
Oh,
or,
yeah,
you know,
for
pop
sure.
In general.
I'm a huge fan of the soundtrack of Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. That was like an absolutely stunning collection of music. They use the same I'm also a big fan of Abzu. I think it's the same choral group like in each of those games, and like they're just inhumanly talented singers. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm a sucker for like those really ambient, like vocally infused soundtracks. Like I think those are really beautiful. But I'm also a huge friggin' fan of like Shredder's Revenge. Like I love T. Lopez's music so much. Like I have like the Sonic Mania soundtrack like on loop for like a year when it came out. Huge fan of I love Cuphead. That was one of my other favorite soundtracks.
Cool.
I'm trying to think of like more off the top of my head that I listened to recently. Streets of Rage, was it 4? I forget. The one that came out a couple of years ago has a real banger of a soundtrack. Like I really do like lots of different kinds of music. Like, you know, the more classically oriented things like Abzu, but like just straight up bops from Sonic Mania. Like I really love anything you put in front of me.
Right. Do you feel that video game soundtracks and video game music get like a bad rap, not or like a stigma around them when it comes to like mainstream music?
You know,
work?
I think in a weird way, I think everybody is trying to cash in on video games right now. Like I've been seeing a lot of like Serious Symphonies doing like Pops concerts, which are like video games on stage or whatever. And they always have like really cringy names like the video games, whatever, you know, like we could do better than that surely, but here we are. I think the concert promoters are like realizing that video games are like insanely popular and that anybody, basically anybody would go to a video game soundtrack, like not if not because they themselves enjoy it, but because their children will not shut up about Minecraft. Like it's a slam dunk, right? Like marketing wise. But I think unfortunately, a lot of these concerts, the people that are running them don't know a thing about video games. So they have really weird set lists of like collections of songs that I don't know if they polled the audience on like what they would honestly want to hear right now. And I also think like I think a lot of concerts, like I don't know, something about the presentation just seems kind of off to me. Like I saw some videos of like the official Elden Ring symphony or symphonic adventure recently, and like I loved Elden Ring. I had to arrange it for that wind ensemble I mentioned, so I've been like living inside that soundtrack. And it's to be honest with you, it's not my favorite soundtrack. Like I think a lot of it is kind of confusing and just noisy, but like whatever. It was a great game and it deserves to have a concert. But this concert,
it's all right. We like controversial opinions here. It's fine. I give them all the time. It's fine.
I would like let me put it this way. I would cut off my left arm to see Bloodborne in concert. I would not do that for Elden Ring. I watched some, these are people that sneaking their cameras into the audience, like the quality is not great, but like I don't know, the presentation was just like go on the adventure of Elden Ring, but it's just the cutscenes. Like there's a lot of information missing there. Like nobody could go to this concert and have a single idea what was going on, and they're just playing the pieces like straight up, like from the versions that were in the video game, so there's like no transition points between like the battle phases. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just really awkwardly, clumsily
it's like
done.
You pressed shuffle on a playlist.
Yeah, it feels very much like that, and it's like I think like if you're going to go to a concert that calls itself a symphony, like I think you need to write in a more symphonic style, which is to say like take the things out of the video game and make it into a concertized version of that, rather than we've got the sheet music, let's just play it.
Yeah.
Everybody loves the Elden Ring,
Yeah. Oh, we know that name.
Yeah. To answer your original question, I don't think there's a stigma so much as like concert promoters don't take it seriously. Like everybody's very into like putting it on the stage, but they don't consider it like a serious art form in the way they would like do other programming. It's just kind of a weird dichotomy, right? Like it almost seems like a oxymoron, but that's the vibe I get, at least.
Yeah, personally. Like I remember growing up, people would be like, "Oh, what music do you listen to?" And I'm like, "Oh, this," and they're like, "Why are you listening to video game music?" I'm like, "'Cause it's good." Like, it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I think games as a whole have become ubiquitous enough that nobody would think it was like stupid to listen to video game soundtracks. Like even when I mentioned like my church colleagues that do not play video games at all, like even they're just like, oh cool, like I don't get a like wow what a weirdo kind of vibe.
Yeah. We were saying before this, I was saying to Scotty that the composer he's very popular at the minute. He was the composer for Mandalorian and some other things. Ludwig, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I don't want to butcher it. And he got an Oscar recently for, I believe it was Oppenheimer. And he said, "Thank you to my parents for giving me guitars and drum machines instead of video games." And he said that in his victory speech, like in his, and it's a bit like I don't know that as you say, like people don't take it seriously enough, and I think that's such a real shame.
Yeah, it's like on one hand, I get the joke he's making. It's like who amongst us has not fallen into a video game for like weeks at a time and like nothing else. But like that's also like not a great thing to say because like they are an art form now. Like there are whole like video game design courses at colleges now. Like this is a serious serious craft we're looking at here. And like like there's not really a whole lot of video games don't have their own award at the oh my God, what am I trying to say? The Grammys? Is that the music one? Yes, the Grammys. Sorry, I should really know that. But yeah, it's like video games and interactive media or whatever. It's like one category, and they had to like fight for that. It's frustrating. Yeah, it's like it's become so ubiquitous. Like everybody plays video games. Like if your mom's playing Candy Crush on her phone, she's playing a video game.
But someone's doing the music for that.
Yeah. Right. When is the Candy Crush Symphonic Adventure?
Yeah.
Oh man, sign me up.
I need the Candy Crush soundtrack release now. Like.
I need the money can't exit my wall. Yeah.
Well, and video games make the most money out of any media entertainment anyway. So it's like why isn't the music recognized more?
I honestly, I think it's because everybody thinks it's easy to make money from video games. And like, maybe on some level, they're not entirely incorrect. Like, yeah, you can churn out a bunch of really garbage, like, match crossword puzzle, like simple. I don't want to say those games are like inherently bad games. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, or just, Tencent pumping out all of these like mobile games that are like, God knows how much they're paying the people that actually make them, right? It's the open secret in the industry, right? Like the people that make the games don't get paid super well. But on that level, like sure, it is pretty easy to make money from games, but like as a serious art form, that's much harder to do, right? Like to say, and like I think it really says something about how far video game music has come that like we don't have Candy Crush the Symphony, right? Like we have Elden Ring or Zelda or whatever. Like we've decided as a whole that like these games have a powerful enough story and impact that we want like a concertized version of them, you know? And like I feel like video games got that faster than film did. Like now they're doing a lot of these like live screenings of like, you know, go see E.T., but like the orchestra is playing the soundtrack live. Like I don't really recall that being a thing before I was seeing like video game concerts.
Yeah,
And stuff like
I
had
saw one when I was a lot younger, but that was for Star Wars, and I think that's like a niche. That's like a niche thing for that because it's Star Wars and
right.
the music for that.
And that's what I was going to say. Is you probably have a few like John Williams things. Like I think there was a Jaws one at some point too, but
I bet. Yeah, it just wasn't like very involved. I went to go see a couple years ago, The Nightmare Before Christmas live, and like first of all, highly recommend. But yeah, it's like second of all, I don't think that was like really a thing beforehand. So I think everyone's realizing like, oh, interactive media is like actually an incredibly fun thing to do, and people will go see that. And I think video games kind of led the charge on that.
Well, I think Rocky Horror Picture Show channeled that a long time ago, but I think
that's true.
That's
an excellent point.
but yeah, that is cool to think. That is cool to think about, just like the way that, you know, they are kind of a trailblazer in that sense, this whole industry.
Right.
Kind of changing things.
It's such a shame that it isn't, because I like there's such a wide range of different sort of music. Like as you were saying, you listening to, you know, you can sit there and listen to Elden Ring, or you can sit there listening to, you know, Streets of Rage, and they're such vastly different like music. Like I'll sit there 1 minute listening to Destiny, and then I'm listening to Mega Man X soundtrack, and they're completely different, completely bloody different.
Exactly.
But they're good in their own way, and it's a shame that people don't take it seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I do think people like you, though, are, you know, changing that, I think, over time.
Oh, thanks.
By, like, you know, putting out incredible work, right? I mean, I think a lot of people, especially, you know, I think older generations hear, like, video game music, and they think, like, the Mario theme song from, like, the NES. And they don't realize, like, the amount of incredible work that, like, you and so many other people are putting out, so...
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of this industry. It's like an incredibly warm community, and I've loved meeting so many people in this field. They're on the whole really lovely people, and yeah, I just can't wait to see like what new things come out of games. You know, like what new sounds we're coming up with, and you know, getting to be a part of as a performer. It's just it's really a blast.
Totally. Are there any game franchises you'd love to work on?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Say Pokemon.
I got to do a recording for like the little TV show, the Paldean Winds thing. That was a very last call.
That's
that was
so
like
cool.
The morning of the audio director is like, hi, I'm not asking, I'm telling you, you're recording something for this tonight. It's an emergency.
That is so awesome. I watched that whole thing, so
it was a mad dash. We all made it happen.
That's impressive.
Man, video game franchises. You know, it's like one of those things. Like, I'm sure I've thought of this before, but then when I'm asked, I'm like, oh god, you know,
what's
honestly,
your favorite food or something
I would
like that?
I would love to be on any FromSoft game. I think that would be one of the coolest things ever. Like if I could have been on Bloodborne or like any Dark Souls, whatever, like that would be a major career highlight for me.
I mean, at some point they have to remaster Bloodborne. Like, come on, at some point you're gonna have to.
Yeah, totally.
It's coming our way.
At some point in the next 30 years. I don't know.
And then you'll get a call, and then that'll be the greatest day of your life.
And then I'll be able to retire. Yeah,
right. Yeah, you retire.
All my money.
I could die happy now.
Bloodborne, yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so what? Quick follow-up question to that then. Why a FromSoft game?
Oh, I mean, I just think my voice would fit really, really well with their style. Like they do a
Totally.
lot of I assume you guys are a little familiar with Bloodborne. There's the hub world where you can level up and so on. It's the hunter's dream. And if you're not familiar, just go look it up. You'll see why immediately. There's
Right.
the like sad soprano voice in the background. Like that is so my jam. Like I could do that all day long. And I just think I would fit really well. And I like, again, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, those aren't my favorite soundtracks, but like Bloodborne was like a masterpiece. I am sincere when I say I would remove like body parts to go see that in concert. I think I would cry and pass out and die. Like it would be so cool. So even if I was just in the choir for one of these, that would be one of the coolest experiences ever. It's
We'll
because like a lot of the
FromSoft when we post it on Twitter, and we'll.
oh yeah, tag FromSoft for me, please.
All right, so you know the FromSoft game? I don't know if you guys have heard of this. There's this game called Metal Wolf Chaos that they made. And
I have not heard of this.
No.
it's so ridiculous. It's like you play as like the president of the United States in a giant mech suit, and you like just destroy shit. It's,
I've heard about this.
Oh yes. Okay.
I have heard about this.
I need your voice, like in some really dramatic like pieces as the background for this.
I love the I'm reading the description. President Michael Wilson and Vice President Richard Hawke. These are such American names,
Right?
Oh my god, this is funny. I gotta play
funny.
this.
It's
It's a
funny.
Devolver. That's why it's so silly.
Yeah, that makes sense. That checks
Got
out.
it.
Adding
Anyway.
on to the any video game, are there any TV show or film franchises you'd like to work on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Man, I'm behind on movies lately. Like if they were still making Lord of the Rings movies, I think my voice would be a really good fit for that.
Ooh, yes.
That would be really fun to do. Or like man, what movies are out right now? I don't even know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like any sort of like fantasy movie would be really cool to be a part of. Like I liked the music from the Narnia movies. I think that would be really cool to sing for something like that. But yeah, like whenever I think of things I'd want to be a part of, I always think of franchises for which my voice is like would be a good fit for, like regardless of like whether it's like my favorite movie or something like that. It's just like I know I could do a good job with like that sound. I would want to do something like that.
Totally. So like if Rings of Power got a season 2 or whatever, you'd be all over that.
Oh yeah, that would be hot as heck.
Yeah, right. That'd be awesome.
I just remembered. I would totally do something for Game of Thrones or like House of the Dragon.
Ooh,
That would be that would be cool. I was obsessed with those books.
That's awesome. That I can totally see that. Like your voice working in those so well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's like films are so much harder to break into. It's very like closed environment, but I hold out hope one of these days.
Hopefully someone's a fan of some of the video games that you've been on. And then
I know, right? I just got to get on more games, make my way into the into the ubiquitous soundtrack of their lives.
Yeah, right. You're not on enough already. It's not like your credits page is like. Oh, that's funny. All right, well, I think that's about it for you because we have like totally kept you for an hour and a half testing these questions. So I feel a little bad because I know we could sit here and like just annoy you with questions for like.
Oh, please, this wasn't annoying at all. I appreciate all of the questions and like I hope I hope like I gave good answers that like fill you in a little bit on the.
They were great.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's so cool to see because at least I mean. Speaking just from my own personal experience, as someone who doesn't really know anything about this whole process listening and loves these soundtracks so much, it's very much kind of this magical thing, this like magical, like unknowable thing that you guys put together. And I'm just always, in awe. And so for you to kind of shed a light on the whole process and, give us a little glimpse behind the curtain is really, really cool. So
I'm
thank you.
happy to. Yeah, my pleasure. I love sharing this stuff with people. Like it's very much like, I know you guys said like you were starstruck before. It was like I'm very much just like, a musician just doing the thing every day. Like, I I have a very like humble setup in my house for recording and stuff like that. Like it's actually really it's easier than you think to get involved in this industry. And there's like lots of really amazing resources out there for anybody to get started. Again, if there are like would-be performers or even composers listening to this, like there's so many resources online that can help you get started and working on games or recording for them and stuff like that. So really happy to shed light on the process. And I just love meeting new people and sharing like what I do. So thank you so much again for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Of course, of course.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, guys. I will link all of Laura's stuff in the description for this episode. So if you want to check out any more of her awesome stuff, it'll be down there. And then, Laura, if you want to share any of those resources that you want to share with any potential, up and comers, we would love to link those as well, so that people can, check out those resources. Mm-hmm. But yeah, without further ado, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. It's been phenomenal. Thank you, audience, wonderful audience, for listening. We really appreciate it. And of course, Robin Map, thank you for hopping on as usual and talking with me.
No problem.
No, thank you, Laura, so much. This has been a treat, and this has been a really fun opportunity. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Anytime. Thank you so much. It was really great to meet you all.
You can put this voice recording away and go on with your life, because you and I both know you'd have me yapping in your ear for the rest of your days.